Welcome to my review of Mad Stalker Full Metal 4th for the X68000. And this review is going to apply to the FM Towns version, the Mega Drive version, and of course this version. So it'll apply to all three versions. Those are the other ports that I completed of the game, so I'm familiar with those. I don't know if there's any other ports of the game. There is the PlayStation version, but it's not really a port of this version. It plays very differently, so I would make a separate review for that, but I would probably review it similarly. That was also very good. But I actually like this version of the game the best, the pixel version, pixel art, because the PlayStation version tries to do some 3D polygon, artwork, which it doesn't really affect the gameplay too much. They don't really cut the animations or anything, so it plays really well. But I do prefer the style and the way this one plays a little bit more from what I remember. So I'm just going to be reviewing this version of the game. The three versions that look like this, they pretty much look identical and play identical. So I would rate them all highly. There may even be a version of this on PC Engine CD, if I remember right, which may also be identical. But with all that said, I don't hear about this game too much, so I thought this game was a semi-obscure game that would be good to review. I've been trying to dig out some of the less popular games out of my playthroughs to review, since I only review games that I completed and I edit down my existing playthroughs that I have up on the channel. So this game is a very straightforward action game. There's really no platforming in this game at all. It's straightforward combat. That's all it is. You have a pretty nice variety of moves, but when it comes to boss fights, you can see here I'm spamming a short dragon punch, and I find that move to really, really confuse bosses and really pin most of them. So the game does have a weakness in that you can really easily exploit the bosses, for the most part, by doing this move. And if it's not this move, it's usually another move that you can spam, that a boss will be weak to. Similar to fighting games with, poor AI. So, that's a weakness. But the actual action in the stages when you're fighting the regular enemies is great. With these enemies, you have them jumping on ceilings, so you can dragon punch them off the ceiling. You have a nice variety of moves. You have your dash strike. Now, this is from a hard mode speed run that I did, a very casual speed run where I basically completed the game on normal regularly, and then I just went straight to hard and just tried to do it as fast as I could. So it's very casual, but that's what the footage is actually from. And I have that posted up, and I made a tutorial on that, which I'll also link in the description. So check that out if you're interested in that, and I'll explain all my tactics there. But you have your dashing attack kind of move, which is similar to games like, Golden Axe, where you have your running dash attacks and, many beat 'em ups. Except in this game, it's not a you can't move to multiple planes. It's a very 2D beat 'em up. It's more like Splatterhouse in that way, or Kung Fu, where you're on a single plane. But it manages to be really it's detailed for a game that's on a single plane with all the moves you have. Being able to throw guys from the air, you have fireball type moves, you have your dashes, you have your dragon punches, definitely some Street Fighter influences, but the action is great. The detail on the sprites is great. It looks awesome. The game plays super, super tight, very sharp, control. And the art design is awesome. The music is awesome. This game really has a lot going for it. And I first played this on the X68000, which, is an awesome machine. But I only had access to it through emulation, and I still only access it through emulation. It's definitely a PC, that a computer that I have to explore more, because there's so many great games on there. They're pretty much like, Genesis-style games on steroids, because it's a similar processor, but it's just much more powerful than what the Genesis had. So, if you like the Genesis style, the Sega Genesis style, X68000 is something that you want to look into. Because there's a lot of exclusive games that never got ported over to Genesis, and there's pretty much arcade-perfect ports of a lot of Sega games, and even Capcom games. So, Most of what you're going to be doing is fighting similar types of robots. There's not a ton of different enemy types, but there's a decent variety. Even though a lot of enemies do look the same, there is differences in the way you have to fight them. So there's a decent little variety, but there's not a ton of different enemy types. But it's enough for this kind of game. And for the length of the game, I think it fits. It feels right. Now, if it was a long game, I think it would do better with more variety. But it's pretty short. I mean, when you know what to do, I believe it's only about 30 minutes or so. So yeah, most of the time, you do have robots that can take to the air. So sometimes you're going to have to change your tactics up by using, the Dragon Punch. You have a long Dragon Punch that goes up really high to the top of the screen, and a shorter one. So you want to mix and match when you're going to do your shorter Dragon Punch and your longer one, depending on the height of the enemy, or you want to spam the short Dragon Punch at times to really corner enemies. And for bosses, like I said, it really fucks with their AI. They can't really understand what's going on when you do that. So you can really exploit the bosses with those short Dragon Punches by just spamming the shit out of them. And they're very easy to do. The Dragon Punch is, I believe, double tapping down and your strike button. So it's very easy to do. It's not as difficult to do as a Dragon Punch in Street Fighter, so you can do it a lot faster. So it actually fits, it controls very well because of that. They don't have any complex inputs or anything like that like fighting games. It's pretty simplified. But it's good because you're going to want to do those moves instantly without having to really put in a bunch of button commands. I mean, even though you do get Dragon Punches down to muscle memory, you don't really want to do that in a game like this where you're constantly dashing and, doing a lot of crazy movements. So the game is very fast to control and pull off all your moves. It feels great. The hits are awesome. The explosions. It's just a game that feels great to play. The only annoying enemy is probably these orbs that float around that you just saw me fighting. I took out one of the red ones. Those can be very irritating to deal with because they have electricity that comes on and that seems a little bit random when the electricity comes on. And, it can really mess you up, kind of kill the flow of the gameplay. But you do learn to deal with them. But they are kind of an irritating enemy. But, you pretty much have those in every game. So now near the end of the game, you get to a boss rush where you have to fight all the bosses again. And I'm going to show the final boss as well. I show the whole final segment here. I thought that would be a good way to finish off because it shows all the bosses and it gives you more of an idea for how you can kind of exploit the bosses with some of the moves. You see me spamming a lot of similar moves, like the dash on that guy works very well. Like you dash and then go right into the Dragon Punch move, and that really kind of fucks that guy up. But a lot of the bosses will just get fucked over by spamming the short Dragon Punches, which you'll see what I mean in a moment. You'll see that. But yeah, the game has a nice variety of enemies. It's a decent length. I mean, it's kind of a short game, but I like that about the game because it's short and to the point. It doesn't have any filler at all. It's action-packed from beginning to end. That's what made me want to do a speed run of it. I'm not even a speed runner, but I just wanted to try to casually just tear through the fucking game because I enjoyed it so much. So I just, did it in a single segment on hard. And I posted that up as well. So search the name of this game on my channel. You'll bring up my playthroughs of all the different versions that I played through this game on various consoles, as well as the tutorial I made. So you can check that out. And grabbing these cylinders will give you some health back. So those are always helpful to keep yourself alive throughout the levels. And they're provided to you every so often. You don't have to wait too long usually to get a health replenishment. It has infinite continues, so you can start the beginning of the stage if you lose your life, basically. I think you may get a few lives that you can use on checkpoints, but if you lose them all, I think you have to start the stage over, if I remember right. But you do have infinite continues, and the game really is not that difficult. It's I found it to be pretty easy, but my first time it took me 2 or 3 hours on normal. My first time, so maybe I should say it's probably like a moderate game for this kind of game, but really not that hard. I would say pretty moderate. And once you beat the game once, I found that I was able to just tear through the game without any extra practice, which is what I did here pretty much. This was on hard mode. But hard really wasn't that much more difficult than normal, Especially once you're familiar with moving fast and exploiting the enemies, you're not going to really have a problem with that once you beat normal. But yeah, I really like the art design of this. When I played this on X68000, I was thinking, man, fuck, this would have been a really cool looking, really great Genesis game. I didn't know it was on Genesis, but I think it wasn't released back in the day. I think somebody released it much later. It may even be a prototype, but I played through it and it played great, the Genesis version, the Mega Drive version. So it is available on emulation, I know that much. And I do recommend, playing it any way you can on any of those systems, because it's pretty much identical. But the X68000 or the FM Towns, Marty, are probably the best ways to play it. I think those are probably the best versions visually. They pretty much all play very much the same, but there are little nuances. If you play the different versions, certain moves that you spam won't work on certain enemies. So you do have to switch up your strategies a little depending on which version you're playing. So this is the final boss. Now the final boss is kind of cool because it's really just another enemy that's pretty much identical to your character. And I believe you can select a different character than this one, but I think they play pretty much the same. They just look different from what I remember. But the final boss is cool in the sense that it's kind of a doppelganger kind of copy fight, where you're fighting yourself kind of thing. And it's kind of cool, but at the same time, it's not any kind of grand, final or anything like that. It's not like a big climax, It's pretty much just fighting a guy that's kind of like yours, but it's cool because the ship is exploding. The presentation is great, so kind of makes up for it. But the last boss fight, it's nothing special to finish off the game. But the whole game is action packed the whole way through. Really good game from beginning to end. Just non-stop action, doesn't let up. There's no platforming or anything, so it's pure combat. And I think it's done really well. And I really do like the variety of moves you have for such a simple 2D type of game, that's on a single plane kind of beat 'em up. They give you a lot of moves, which makes it really exciting throughout to just tear through the game. It's the kind of game you can replay just because it's so much fun to just tear through it. And if I was a speedrunner, I would probably enjoy making multiple speedrun attempts to try to get my times down because it's just such an enjoyable game, So overall, I would give this game a 7.5 out of 10. The only reason I don't give it an 8, an 8 for me would be like, I consider that like in the great range. And I think it's kind of just short of greatness because, it's a little bit simple, a little bit short. But I could see the argument for people that would really, really enjoy the game. And I really enjoyed it. But I give it a 7.5 out of 10. Thanks for watching.